Title: The Man in the Mirror. In a quiet town nestled deep in the woods, there was an old, abandoned mansion known as the Blackwood Estate. For decades, locals had whispered about its haunting presence, but none dared to go near it, especially after sunset. The mansion had a reputation. People said it was cursed, and those who ventured inside never returned the same. One night, a young man named Daniel, who had just moved to the town, decided to explore the mansion. He was skeptical of the supernatural and didn't believe in curses or ghosts. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his phone, he ventured into the cold, dark night, determined to debunk the myths surrounding the estate. As Daniel approached the mansion, the wind howled through the trees and the branches seemed to reach out like bony fingers, trying to pull him back. Ignoring the eerie atmosphere, he pushed open the creaking front door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay hung in the air. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing crumbling walls and broken furniture scattered across the floor. He wandered from room to room, finding nothing but the remnants of what had once been a grand home. As he made his way deeper into the mansion, he noticed something strange, a large, ornate mirror hanging on the wall of what appeared to be a ballroom. The mirror was immaculate, untouched by the dust and grime that covered everything else in the mansion. Its surface gleamed, reflecting the room with unnerving clarity. Curious, Daniel walked up to the mirror and stared at his reflection. For a moment, everything seemed normal. But then he noticed something odd. His reflection was smiling, a wide, sinister grin that stretched across its face, though Daniel himself wasn't smiling at all. He blinked in confusion. But when he opened his eyes, the reflection remained the same. Its eyes locked onto his. Suddenly, the reflection began to move on its own. It reached out a hand, as if inviting Daniel to touch the mirror. Against his better judgment, Daniel slowly raised his hand and placed it against the cold glass. The moment his skin made contact, he felt a jolt, as if a current of electricity had shot through him. His heart raced as the reflection's grin grew even wider. Before Daniel could pull away, the reflection grabbed his wrist and yanked him forward with incredible force. He felt himself being pulled into the mirror, the world around him spinning and distorting. Everything went black. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was standing in the same ballroom. But something was different. The air was cold, colder than before, and the room was bathed in an unnatural light. He turned to look at the mirror and saw himself, but this time he was on the other side. His reflection was now in the real world, while Daniel was trapped inside the mirror. Panic set in as he pounded on the glass, but his reflection merely smiled and waved at him before turning and walking away, leaving Daniel alone in the cold, empty void of the mirror. Hours, days, maybe even weeks passed. Daniel couldn't tell. He was trapped, watching as his reflection lived his life. It mimicked him perfectly, fooling everyone in the town. But Daniel noticed something strange. Every time his reflection looked into a mirror, it would grin that same sinister grin and whisper something inaudible. Finally, one day, Daniel saw a glimmer of hope. A young woman, curious like he had been, entered the mansion. She wandered through the rooms until she found the ballroom and the mirror. As she approached, Daniel tried to warn her, but his voice was lost in the void. His reflection, however, turned to face the mirror, smiling that wicked smile. The woman paused, sensing something was off. But before she could react, the reflection reached out, its hand passing through the glass like water. It grabbed her wrist, just as it had done to Daniel, and pulled her into the mirror. In a terrifying twist, Daniel found himself suddenly free, standing in the ballroom once again. He was no longer in the mirror, but something felt wrong. When he looked at his reflection, it was the woman, now trapped behind the glass, screaming silently, just as he had been. Daniel realized the horrifying truth. The mirror needed a soul to be freed. And now, The woman was trapped, destined to take his place until another curious soul came along. He had escaped, but at a terrible cost. The curse of the Blackwood Estate continued, and the mirror awaited its next victim. As Daniel left the mansion, his reflection in every surface he passed grinned that sinister grin, knowing that the cycle would begin again.